Here at Building Better Dungeons, we're big believers that anything you learn can be used to good effect when you're a dungeon master, whether it helps you prepare more efficiently, improvise more dynamically, or inspires you to be more creative in general. One of the things I've become obsessed with recently is linguistics, how languages form and reform over time. Bibluridian, who runs a constructed language / speculative biology YouTube channel, has a rather excellent series of videos on how one might construct a language, and I thought his technique might bear strange fruit if we adapt it to building dungeons. His approach is simple. When constructing a language, start as simply as possible. Create an incomplete language with the barest of bones, and then mutate. Over time, apply changes to the phonology, the syntax, any of it, all of it. Creating this history or evolution imbues languages with a sense of reality that can be difficult to otherwise create, and the same, I'd say, is true for dungeons. But first things first, Bibluridian has an excellent point in the introductory video to that series. When making a language, one should consider exactly who their target audience is, and when building a dungeon, we should think of what particular kinds of feelings we're trying to evoke in our players. Is this dungeon an ancient ruin, made to create ideas of huge, sprawling time spans and the feeling of your world having a real history? Is it a dangerous stronghold built to impose tension and dread on your players, forcing them to use everything at their disposal just to get through it alive? Or is it simply a place where monsters live, where players can fight creatures and notice interesting details that breathe a little life into the campaign? So, first, create as simple a dungeon as you can stomach. This one here is a simple encampment of elves, made with a free demo of Dungeon Builder, by the way, link in the link place. They wanted to have good sightlines of any encroaching enemies, so they built it on a small hill, and they wanted to be protected from wild beasts or intruders, so they built walls with easily guarded entryways. Inside, they put up some internal dividers to give some sense of privacy for makeshift bedrooms, and added a simple roof, which I'll omit most of the time here to make it easy to see what's going on inside. So, what kind of things might these elves own? Real steel weapons in an encampment this far away from civilization isn't particularly likely. Maybe someone has an immaculately kept short sword because her grandfather handed it down to her, but the rest are probably rocking simple wooden weapons and animal skin armor. Perhaps the encampment collectively owns a brilliant emerald that they traded to a traveling caravan, giving their choicest cuts of meat and juiciest bushels of elf rye for a chance to own something truly special, but anything fancier than that's pretty unlikely. Now, this is really just an enclosure to sleep in and to eat in if it's raining. It's not much of a dungeon at all, but it doesn't need to be. Remember, this is the proto-dungeon. It can be as awful as we like, because no one needs to see it but us. So, how do we grow our little elven encampment? Well, there's no limit to the kind of thing that can happen. It's a literal world of possibilities. For now, we won't do anything too dramatic. Let's say that this encampment catches the attention of a local elven prince looking to establish a more firm footing in the region. He decides to impose and move in, and this means that some changes are in order to make the encampment good and ready for a royal guest. We can see now the encampment is fleshing out a bit. There's room with some invisible walls so you can see what's inside that a prince might live in, with a writing desk for him to carry out his stately business, and a dinner table for him to eat food, and, most importantly, a chest for him to store his valuables. The prince probably has inks and dyes that are quite rare, and a set of nice clothes for when he's having visiting dignitaries over for dinner. But I'd say his most prized possession is a ring of ancestors, a magical item that, once per day, can be used to cast magical missile as a second-level spell. You can see that the prince has had a barracks built for his retinue to sleep in, and I'd say that whilst the sovereign soldiers sleep somewhat scabrous, the warriors, while wreathed within wretched walls, wield wicked, wonderfully welded weapons. That is to say, they got real steel, folks. So now we're getting there, but the prince has greater ambitions still. He wants the little keep of his to grow into something more. He's going to need some help for that. He starts to make offers and call in favors, and soon, yes, this is a little bit more like it. The new people the prince has called in to build up this would-be community aren't likely to live with the prince in the encampment proper. They're probably going to build their own shelters nearby. But for a real town to start development, a blacksmith's will be useful, and the prince will want to keep a close eye on that. So whilst space was being dug out for its forge, they carved a similar spot to store foodstuffs. Whilst excess food could be hung up wherever inside the encampment before, as things grow, a nice cool underground spot to store food will become very useful. Now, most of the food will be things grown in the region that aren't very interesting, but any traded luxury items will likely be stored here as well. Wine and chocolate, for instance. And now that the elves have access to a forge, they're likely to be equipped with better armor and steel, which, crude as it is the pride and joy of the local blacksmith, who beams at the opportunity to do such a vital work for his prince and his people. There's a talk of doubling the size of the keep within the year, and things really look like they're going well for this little. Oh, shoot. Oh, darn, oh, damn. Oh, well, what do you know, all gnolls? None know why gnolls gnaw on nice neighborhoods till they're nary and naught but nothing. Maybe they're up for revenge. Maybe they're libertarians. Maybe you have Volo's Guide to Monsters, and you know that gnolls are just very hungry boys. But regardless, a band of these hyenoid monsters got wind of a town growing faster than its military defenses could protect, and they swept in and were merciless. Blood stains the grassy floor as the foodstuffs and survivors were feasted upon over the course of many weeks. Gnolls aren't really known for building, but they are known for wrecking. Smithereens of former furniture litter the floor, as do stray bits of bone and gristle. The only addition they've made is this sacrificial pit in the largest room of the small keep, from which many a scream has haunted the hilltop since. Whatever bits the gnolls couldn't eat, they fed to their dogs, and whatever the dogs wouldn't eat were packed and dumped in the previous food storage room, where the pain and horror of the people they used to be has packed and congealed into various necrotic oozes and slimes, which the gnolls delight in poking and prodding. Stupid as they are, they're smart enough to leave the blacksmith's room alone. The old elf's soul has refused to leave, and he throttles anyone who dares cross the forge's former threshold. But gnolls have no agriculture and no real trade. When their stock of villagers is depleted, they'll move on to prey on someone new. Ever hungry, ever moving, they'll stop until they're slaughtered, and so the keep becomes abandoned, too full of horror and awful memories for anyone to want to salvage. They'll take the crudest pieces of steel, but they have no love of artistry or riches. Most of the people's weapons and treasures will lie in the dirt and blood when the gnolls move on, half buried. So easy to overlook. And so it is that the keep lies abandoned and alone for almost a century. And so it is that when the dark cultists who have been plaguing the land are in need of a place to conduct their foul business, they have the perfect stronghold to operate from. And so it is that when your players confront this foul cult for one reason or another, they'll find a twisted, fetid wooden keep with rusting elven blades hanging from the walls, fine inks and dyes, and a special ring stomped into the earth in what was once a large bedroom, a forge haunted by a furious ghost, a strange room where foul black puddings writhe and twist around the glint of a gleaming emerald. They'll find, in short, a place scarred by an atrocity that happened nearly a century ago, a place dripping with details about the former inhabitants. Of course, that's only one way you can do things, and this dungeon is pretty small. The demo version of Dungeon Builder only gives you so much space to play with. But I hope I've illustrated that building a small history for your dungeon and letting it evolve can be a rewarding way to create a real, lived-in space dripping with flavor and interesting questions for your players to ponder. Where did this emerald come from? It's cut in such a strange way. And why did someone need these fancy inks in a place like this? What happened to this keep? Maybe you could try it for yourself right now. Dungeon Builder's demo is free, and it's very intuitive and easy to use. You can mock something up for yourself pretty quick. If you do decide to evolve a little dungeon like this, please do share it with us in the comments. It's the kind of thing we love to read. And it'd be really cool if the comment section of this YouTube video became a little library of interesting dungeon ideas for people to peruse and use at their pleasure. If you liked this video, you can subscribe for more, or you could share it with your DM in the hopes that they might create some more interesting spaces for you to play in. If you like world building, you could join our Discord, where we're currently playing the massive multiplayer game of Microscope, a collaborative world building RPG, and we'd love it if you came along and shared your creativity. We have some sort of really weird things going on there now. There's a lot of eldritch horror and steampunk and sky whales, so if any of that sounds like it'd be up your alley, do join us. Thanks so much for watching, and safe home.